The weight of parental expectations can sometimes feel like an overwhelming burden. While some individuals rise to meet these challenges, others may find themselves on a downward spiral of failure. But what if that spiral took a dark and tragic turn? This is the story of Henry Chau, a man whose life was marked by consistent setbacks, never managing to achieve anything of significance in nearly 3 decades. How did Henry respond to the pressures from his parents? And how did his actions send shockwaves throughout an entire nation? Our journey today takes us back to a familiar place, the bustling city of Hong Kong. Known locally as Xiangang Tibi Xingzhenku, Hong Kong is a truly unique region, composed of several small islands. But beneath this vibrant surface, our story's dark protagonist emerges, Henry Chau Hoi Leong. Born on June 7, 1983, Henry was the younger son of Glory Chau Wing Ki and Moon Sui Yue. Not much is known about Glory and Moon's background, but they were married for many years and, along with Henry's older brother, lived in a Sai Ing Pun apartment. Henry's childhood was largely uneventful, though his parents did their best to support him. They paid for private tutoring and piano lessons, hoping to give him the best start in life. However, these were not the things Henry truly desired. Henry faced severe bullying and discrimination in Australia, which, combined with his academic struggles, led him to drop out in 2003. When he returned to Hong Kong, he lied to his parents, claiming he had graduated. But, as you might expect, Glory and Moon soon discovered the truth. Their disappointment was palpable, but they refused to give up on him, pushing Henry to attend university in Hong Kong instead. This new attempt to set Henry on the right path also ended in failure. He drifted from job to job, unable to hold down a position for more than a few weeks. He would either be relieved of his job due to poor performance or would abruptly quit without warning. The only consistent job he ever had was as a pianist, though he never wanted his parents to know about it. It was during one of these fleeting jobs in 2007 that Henry crossed paths with someone who would play a significant role in his story, Angus Tse Chin Kei. Angus, a 35-year-old Macanese man, was known for his gentle and kind-hearted nature. Unfortunately, Angus wasn't academically inclined, and compared to Henry's relatively high IQ of 126, Angus's IQ was a modest 84. Friends described Angus as someone easily influenced, willing to do anything for companionship or a good meal. By the end of 2012, Henry found himself in deep financial trouble. His parents, Glory and Moon, had long urged him to find a job and move out, wanting to reclaim their own lives. But Henry resisted, leading to growing tension within the household. Matters came to a head in February 2013 when Henry made an outrageous demand. He suggested that his parents sell their apartment and divide the proceeds 3 ways, 1/3 to him, 1/3 to his brother, and 1/3 to themselves. Unsurprisingly, Glory and Moon refused, as they were nearing retirement and had plans to enjoy their later years in peace. Fed up with Henry's relentless demands and toxic behavior, his parents finally had enough. They confronted him, telling him to move out of their home. Predictably, this ultimatum did not sit well with Henry. Furious, he stormed out of the house, severing all contact with his family. What Henry did next remains unclear, but in the weeks that followed, he began to craft a malevolent plan, one that would soon send shockwaves through Hong Kong. On March 15, 2013, the early morning calm in the suburbs of Hong Kong was shattered when police were dispatched to a family home following a tip-off. They were there to arrest a man in his late 20s who had reportedly confessed to committing a horrifying crime in a WhatsApp group chat. The chilling message described how he had just taken the lives of his own parents. Shortly after, 2 arrests were made, Henry Chau and Angus Tse. The confession came directly from Henry himself. The police were led to an apartment on Phuc Chuc Street in Tai Kok Sui, which belonged to Angus. As they entered the premises, they immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Blood spattered the floors and walls, trash bags filled with cement and sand were strewn about, and various weapons, including a saw and 7 knives, were scattered throughout the home. But the true horror was yet to be discovered. The investigators noticed a microwave covered in a thick layer of yellow grease, and the stench of cooked meat permeated the air. When they opened one of the trash bags, they realized the horrifying truth. It was filled with severed human limbs. To fully understand the gruesome events that led to this moment, we need to rewind the clock by 2 months. After storming out of his parents' home, Henry's resentment only deepened. He felt entitled to their estate and blamed them for all of his life's failures. In his twisted mind, he believed that the only way to sever the emotional ties with his parents was by ending their lives. He convinced himself that by unaliving them, he could somehow be reborn. Henry didn't plan to carry out this heinous act alone. He turned to his friend, Angus, exploiting his vulnerability to manipulate him into participating. Henry knew Angus was easily influenced, and to ensure his compliance, he threatened to unalive Angus's mother if he refused. Over the next several months, Henry made a series of sinister purchases, including nearly a dozen knives, a microwave, a cooker, and 2 new fridges. What he had planned for his parents on March 1st was a nightmare beyond imagination. Days passed, and Henry's older brother grew increasingly worried. Their parents hadn't been heard from in nearly a week, which was highly unusual. Henry attempted to calm his brother, suggesting that Glory and Moon might have gone on holiday to China. But his brother, unconvinced, reported their disappearance to the police. As the investigation unfolded, authorities found no evidence that Glory and Moon had left the city, raising further suspicion. Desperate for answers, Henry's brother took to social media, launching a missing persons campaign in hopes of finding any information about their whereabouts. The last known sighting of the couple was on March 1st, near Langham Place in Mongkok. Henry even reached out to Apple Daily, making a public appeal for help. But despite these efforts, there was no sign of his parents. On March 15th, the reason for their silence was horrifyingly revealed. The search of Angus's apartment uncovered a scene straight out of a nightmare. In addition to the severed limbs and greasy microwave, police found over 600 styrofoam lunchboxes, each containing salted and cooked meat from Glory and Moon. Both of their heads were discovered in the fridges. Underneath Angus's mattress, investigators found a notepad filled with chaotic notes detailing how to dispose of the bodies and a shopping list of the items needed for the gruesome task. The plan included covering the bones with sand and cement before disposing of them in the sea. As for the remaining body parts that were unaccounted for, it is speculated that they were cooked and consumed. Moving forward to the legal proceedings, both Henry and Angus were detained in custody until their trials commenced. Initially set for August 2014, the trial had to be restarted in February 2015 after 2 jurors were excused. During the trial, psychologists were called upon to explore the complexities of Henry's troubled mind. It was revealed that in the month leading up to the murders, Henry had been obsessively listening to Vers la Flamme, using the music to psych himself up. One psychologist suggested that the music played a significant role in shaping Henry's thoughts, intensifying his visions of fire and destruction. Henry believed that the end of the world was imminent and that he was powerless to escape it. One of the intriguing aspects of international cases is observing how justice systems vary from country to country. In this case, it's doubtful that such a defense would hold up in a Western court. Nevertheless, a more credible psychological assessment claimed that Henry was suffering from bipolar disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. These diagnoses seemed far more pertinent to his case than his choice of music. However, after a subsequent evaluation, both diagnoses were dismissed, replaced instead by a diagnosis of a personality disorder and extreme narcissism. Henry eventually confessed that if he had successfully carried out the murders without getting caught, he and Angus would have fled to mainland China to embark on an unaliving spree, targeting prostitutes and random women. Both Henry and Angus presented conflicting accounts of the murders. True to his nature, Henry refused to take full responsibility for his actions and attempted to shift some of the blame onto Angus. He claimed that after luring his parents to the apartment, Angus unalived his mother while Henry unalived his father in the neck. Henry also claimed that he injured his leg during the unaliving, which required medical attention, leaving Angus alone with the bodies. Upon his return, Henry alleged that Angus had already dismembered the corpses, absolving him of any blame for the mutilation. To further distance himself, Henry even tried to frame Angus by placing a notebook under his bed. However, handwriting analysis later confirmed that Henry was the author of the notes. Angus, on the other hand, told a very different story. He claimed that Henry had already unalived his parents by the time he arrived at the apartment. According to Angus, he was not present until March 4th, 3 days after the unaliving. He insisted that his involvement in disposing of the bodies was driven by fear for his mother's life after Henry had threatened to unalive her. While he acknowledged that helping to dispose of the bodies was illegal, Angus maintained that he played no part in the actual unaliving. In the end, the physical evidence and available testimonies swayed the judge and jury in Angus's favor. A significant factor in their decision was the considerable IQ gap between the two men, as well as the glowing character references provided by Angus's friends and family. This contrasted sharply with Henry, whom the judge described as a narcissist consumed by fantasies of success. The judge noted that Henry had no empathy for others and dismissed his claims that the murders were a spur-of-the-moment decision driven by emotion. The judge emphasized that the crime was premeditated, with planning intensifying in January and February, and culminating in the murders on March 1st. Text messages sent by Henry to his friends further cemented his guilt. In these messages, Henry declared himself a psychopath, stating, "I cannot empathize with the normal person's pain because of the experiences of my childhood and adolescence. My emotional process is very different from a normal person." On March 20th, 2015, the court reached its final verdict. Henry Chau was found guilty of the double unaliving of his parents, while Angus Tsay was acquitted of the unaliving charges. Both men were found guilty of preventing the lawful burial of a body and received separate sentences for this offense. Henry Chau was sentenced to life imprisonment, with an additional 9 years and 4 months for the unlawful disposal of the bodies. In contrast, Angus Tsay received a much lighter sentence of 1 year for his role in the unlawful burial. An interesting side note, by the time Angus's trial concluded, he had already spent 2 years in prison awaiting his fate. This meant he had served more time than his eventual sentence required, leading to his immediate release back into society. As for Henry, the judge's final remarks were as follows. "People may wonder why you did this. The fact that there is no obvious answer is what makes you so dangerous. In my view, this statement is incredibly accurate. There was no logical reason for Henry to unalive his own parents. He is, without a doubt, a selfish individual, and now he will have to face the consequences of his actions for the rest of his life." Glory and Moon had only ever wanted to see their son grow into a successful and contented man. Instead, they had to witness Henry make one poor decision after another, despite their constant guidance and support. Their disappointment is entirely understandable. While there is nothing wrong with seeking contentment in a simple life, Henry's fatal error was in believing it was acceptable to exploit his own parents. Even worse, he saw them not as the people who raised him but as disposable objects, expendable to the point of destruction. It's truly a tragic story. My heart goes out to Henry's brother, who now has to live the rest of his life without his parents, burdened by the knowledge that his own brother took them away. I hope he has found some semblance of peace after enduring such horrific events. And as for Angus, I sincerely hope he has managed to stay out of trouble since his release. That brings us to the end of this case, and that concludes the haunting and tragic tale of Henry Chau, a man whose failures and narcissism led him down a path of darkness, ultimately destroying the very people who gave him life. Stories like this remind us of the thin line between pressure and despair, and the terrifying consequences when that line is crossed. If you want more chilling true crime stories, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay safe and remember, the darkest monsters often hide in plain sight.